All right, everyone, we might as well get underway. Greg.
Thank you. Just as we kick off, first of all, thank you for joining us. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands upon which we meet, elders past, present and emerging, and also recognise their ongoing connection to the lands. Look, a key element for us, and I appreciate we've got a mixed audience tonight from people who have done Coast to Kosci before, have crewed before, are very familiar, a number of people who are either maybe new to the event and also possibly new to crewing as well. So we'll have a bit of a mix of activity. Also note that we'll have a number of webinars between now and the start, which will also be for support crew and also a safety briefing in that aspect. So it's not you get everything tonight, but certainly we'll have a Q&A as part of that. A key thing throughout the event, very important for all of us, is about runner safety, about being smart and being safe. We can't stress that enough. I think we're all well aware of a number of challenges that have been in different places through Marathon des Sables, also the Ultra in China. And as always, as experienced runners, our challenge is to make sure we remain focused, and everything we do is about safety. We want every runner to finish. That's why we have qualifying criteria. We also want every runner to finish safely, and we want every support crew person to have a good time and finish safely. So a lot of the rules we have, race rules, are about safety, and we expect you to follow those rules for the right reasons, for the right outcomes. The runners who participated in last year's event are well aware we had almost too hot weather on the first day, and then we had deteriorating conditions and blowing a gale, very heavy winds, and we actually had to move to an inclement finish at Charlotte Pass. And what really brought home for most people, even though they were experienced, was the importance of mandatory gear. We were very clear we had mandatory gear checks on the way up the mountain before departing Charlotte Pass, and we can't stress enough we'll be doing that. So not just have your mandatory gear list, pull it out, make sure it's in good working condition. If it's not, get it new, get good kit, and be ready for anything that the mountain may or may not present to us. Just a bit of an update on where we're at. A few things like COVID considerations first and foremost. Again, none of us have a crystal ball for the future. We're encouraged that the local government area openings and closings have slowed dramatically in New South Wales. Snowy Monaro, even 1 or 2 weeks ago, was under closure. They've reopened. We appreciate everybody's support and openness towards vaccination and being vaccinated. It is a mandatory requirement for runners and also for support crew. Again, it's actually, being honest, it's a little bit less about us as runners. It's about the communities we go through, the Toowoomba's, the Cathcarts, the Dalgettys. I'd hate for, and St Mickey's very much the same, we would hate that unfortunately we brought COVID to those communities and created a shutdown. And this is also where you think about not just personal safety, safety of others, but also about reputation for the event. And I know approvals would be extremely difficult to get if we were found to create issues around the COVID front. So thank you for your support and openness for those people who are staying there vaccinated and getting their certificates, etc. Again, we'll have the support of the local communities. The Cathcart shop will be stocked. Cash only for them. They're staying open, they're loading up. Similarly, the Toowoomba Public School are very excited about having us come through again. And guys, again, they really welcome us as an event, and they also welcome the dollars that we bring into their local communities. So please, we encourage you to support the people who support us. We'll have a smaller field this year. You're well aware Coast to Kosci is a boutique event anyway and limited to 50 runners. We elected not to run an emergency list this year because we did leave the announcement of runners till a later date. We didn't think that was quite fair. We've had a number of withdrawals, a lot of that due to the uncertainty around COVID and borders. So at the moment we have a field of 35 runners. What I will say to that though is we did accept 2 late entries, used our race director discretion with those. And after consultation and a lot of discussion between myself and Nikki, we accepted an application from Nikki Wind to join the field, and Nikki's a past Coast To Kosci runner, and also Adrian Watmore, who's also crewed at Coast To Kosci previously as well. But we will have a smaller field this year. So it will be the same event. It will just be a much more intimate event and not as many people there. So expect a smaller event this year. Also, we announced that we'd confirmed an accommodation and presentation venue, which will be the Office of Sport and Recreation Camp at Jindabyne, which is on Barry Way, and you'll actually run past it. We have sent details about the accommodation, and again, that's also got a venue there. For those of you who are inclined the next day, there is a fantastic first-class athletics track there, right near the presentation venue. If anyone wants to do a recovery run, that'll be just a great place, and everyone can watch you while they have their breakfast. Also, just a reminder on mandatory gear. I touched on that a few minutes ago. Make sure you have all your mandatory gear, and your support crew who wish to go up to the summit with you also have their mandatory gear. There's no exceptions to that. We didn't allow an acceptance last year, and we certainly won't do that this year. And we will need to see your stuff in your pack, regardless of when people say it's in my pack. We want to see it. For those of you who've done Coast To Kosci before and did it last year, those from last year, there's 1 or 2 very minor changes. From those of you who have not done Coast To Kosci for a couple of years, there's a few more changes from years gone by. Not substantial, but we'll talk about those and get into those now. Okay. Mickey, race schedule.
Thanks, Greg. So it's kind of the same format as it's been for a few years, aside from the pre-race safety briefing. I'm sure a lot of people enjoyed, endured Paul's wonderful safety briefings at the very outset. We've chosen to do it via Zoom, give you a little bit of time back. So that's going to take place on the Wednesday evening. On the Thursday, we're asking people to check in between the hours of 5 and 7. And that's going to happen as it did last year at the Eden Lookout in Rotary Park. That worked really well. On the Friday morning, we're asking everybody to register between the 10 minutes between 4:50 and 5 o'clock. And that'll allow us to have what we did last year in terms of welcome to country. The race start is at 5:30, both at Boydtown Beach on the sand there. And then we've got a few cut-offs. So on the Saturday morning, after 25 hours, we'll get the actual cut-off at Dalgety Bridge. It's not Dalgety Hall. So you actually need to go past the Dalgety Hall. And the actual cut-off there is at 148 kilometres at the Dalgety Bridge. So that's 25 hours after start. Also on the Saturday in the afternoon, run about 2:30. That's 33 hours after the start. We've got the 189 kilometre cut-off at Threadbow River. Sunday the 28th of November at on midnight, that's 42 and a half hours after start. We've got the actual cut-off at Charlotte Pass. And then at 3:30 in the morning, on the Sunday morning, we've got the race finish at Charlotte Pass. And then, you know, if you're still kind of alive, we've got the actual post-race breakfast and the race presentation. And that's going to be held this year, as Greg said, at the Jindabyne Sport and Rec Centre. It's a really good venue. It's kind of custom built a little bit for an event like ours. And I'm sure everybody will enjoy it. So that's post-race breakfast at 7 o'clock. And then we'll have the race presentation thereafter at 9 o'clock.
Fantastic. Some points to go through. This is perhaps not just for some of the new runners, but importantly for those people who've done it before. So there's a few people who've done Coast To Kosci in past years, but not last year's event. Again, everyone must have a dedicated support crew and vehicle. And we use the word crew, meant to be multiple, not one. And 2 is probably a bit thin. 3 is normally a good quantity, but 2, you can't get away with less than 2. It's just too much, and it actually risks safety of your crew. And we really desire experienced support crew wherever possible. And not support crew from the been to a park run, but actually people who have done your qualifying events with you, that know you, know what you're like, but also know what to do, particularly as the race gets further on. At all times, you're running on the right-hand side of the road facing oncoming traffic. The only two exceptions to that are going up Big Jack. There you're also allowed a pacer, and going up Baloka, which is after Dalgety. So on those times, be on the left-hand side of the road. At all other times, be on the right-hand side of the road. Avoid running in large groups. There'll be a smaller field of 35. The likelihood of that happening is probably fairly slim this year. But even more than a couple of runners, we would dissuade you to do that. And that's, again, on the basis of just from COVID management perspective, being honest. You have to wear your race number and that should be visible at all times. A number of runners last year, when they changed clothes, actually took their bib off and didn't put it back on. We want that on at all times. So whether you use that by race belt, it gets pinned on, we don't care, but we want it on at all times that shows you're officially in the race. A rear flashing light must be worn at all times. It's effectively, think of a bike light, and that's on the rear of you, and that's effectively to aid safety at night when you're out on the road. High-vis reflective vests, as always, and additionally, once you get to Jindabyne, we want that worn all the way up to the finish line as well. Goes without saying, headlamps worn at night. We know one or two people are quite adept at running out in the dark without headlights for the experience. We don't want that. We need you to be visible for the traffic. The traffic leaving Dalgety pub, the traffic on their way home from Jindabyne at night, we want them to be able to see you and to be able to give you a safe and wide berth. Similarly, that also goes for your vehicles, which will have hazard lights on as well and travelling no more than 40 kilometres an hour. And again, that's all in the detailed race rules. Mandatory gear, we will check it. We will ask you to pull it out. If you want to save a bit of time, we don't have an issue with the runner leaving Charlotte Pass without their mandatory gear, as long as their mandatory gear is able to be shown to one of the race officials who will check it off and you go and catch up your runner. Similarly, what we'd actually recommend is that as your runner approaches Charlotte Pass, your support crew actually moves ahead, make sure all the mandatory equipment is in order, ready to go for an inspection. And we do check it off against a checklist. And if you don't have it, or you've got to go back to your vehicle, that's what you've got to do, and it'll just cost you time. It is permissible to rest or sleep in your stationary support vehicle. You cannot travel forward along the route. It needs to be parked safely off the route. As you'll see in the detailed rules, not to be parked in farm driveways or against gates. It needs to allow access to people's properties at all time, and you need to park in a safe manner, but you can't also go forward. But if you want to have a kip in the van and support crew for a while, you're welcome to do that. You are able to deviate from the race route, and that might be just pulling off into a slightly bigger parking area or a clear space or something along those lines. It's not intended to mean you can go ahead to town and then come back later. You have to resume running from the exact point of departure. And again, if you're doing this event, you want to run 240 kilometres, not run 239.2 and kid yourself that you snuck a bit or you did something else. We're all experienced people and we want the achievement of the event, so do it properly. We know you will, and we just encourage you to do that. Obviously, once you retire, that's it. You cannot rejoin at a later time. When you retire, withdrawn, that's it. And we expect to know when that occurs and approximately what time that occurs to be communicated to race officials.
Moving on to pacers, we've got pacers, so you can actually kick them in after 8:30 on the Friday evening or 15 hours after the race start. So there's one exception to that, and that's going up Big Jack, and you're allowed a pacer going up there, as Greg said. Along the route, you're only allowed one pacer. The exception to that is when you're going up to Mount Kosciuszko from Charlotte Pass, and you can have multiple pacers joining the runner at that point. So that's from Charlotte Pass up to the top of Mount Kosciuszko and return. Any pacer?
Can I just interrupt for a sec?
Yeah, sure, Andy.
We're still only seeing the first page of your slide of your PowerPoint.
Oh, really?
Sure, if you've been meaning to move through it, but we're still on the cover.
Track young players. What we might do is, thanks Andy for letting us know, when we do an open Q&A at the end, we'll just scroll the slides slowly, and if people have questions, we'll let them pop through.
So can you see that, Andy?
Yep, that's working.
Beautiful. Good man, thank you.
Perfect, thanks guys.
Thanks, Andy, for doing that. All pacers, you must abide by the same rules as the runners. You're not allowed to provide any physical assistance to the runners, but the actual pacers can act as mules for the runners as well.
Sure. Support crew. When your runner reaches a checkpoint, we want you to communicate to us and tell us what time they go through. There will be a couple of WhatsApp groups available. There will be one WhatsApp group specifically for crew chiefs. We did have that last year. We found it got, I used the word out of control, with too many people on it. It became arguably a party line, and that started by us allowing an additional crew chief to join for a team, and then someone else jumped in, and it just went from there. So we expect to have 35 people on that WhatsApp group as support crew chiefs. If you happen to have two chiefs, that'll be up to you how you manage that between phones or devices between the two, but there'll be only one number allowed for it, okay, with that. So when a person goes through a checkpoint, we expect you to text us, advise runner name, number, and that they've gone through that specific checkpoint. There is a reasonably sized sign there, which indicates what the checkpoint is, and you can see on the presentation there what the appropriate landmark is. So all we expect to see is XYZ, runner number 62, Cathcart at 13:25. That's it. With that, you can only be supported by one vehicle at a time. That's really quite important. We have no issue with other people being on course to look at the event or spectate on the event from that purpose, but you cannot have more than one vehicle. If you happen to have two vehicles that are doing a swap over, that's okay, but you need to do a clear swap over at an appropriate checkpoint. You can't go out there and be out there both for 3 hours at the one time supporting a runner. That's unfair to other people who only have one support crew. And again, for support crew, high-vis vests at all time. Please look both ways before you cross the road. There's actually a bigger risk of a support crew person being hit by a travelling vehicle on the roads. And there are a couple of spots where the local community move quite quickly along those dirt roads, and that is one of the major concerns. So we ask you to again, from a safety message, we want everybody to finish at Charlotte Pass. We also want everybody to be at Sport and Rec Camp the next day, and we don't want incidents. So please do the right thing. Wear a high-vis vest, look both ways before you cross the road, and drive safely and within the guidelines of the rules.
Do you want to continue?
Yeah, okay, all right. A couple of these points I've just touched on already. We want you to do a maximum speed of 40 k's on the race route, okay? Yeah, that's slow, but if you've dropped your runner and you're moving ahead at 40 kilometers an hour and they're moving ahead at, say, 8 to 11 k's an hour, you're going to get a long way ahead of them in a very quick pace, very quick period of time. Similarly, if they run ahead of you, it won't take you long to catch them. This is mostly about, again, safety for the local community, but also safety for fellow runners who are out there. We don't want you driving past another runner at 100 k's an hour on a dirt road and spraying with gravel. Just think and do the right thing. We encourage you not to park or stop under trees. You're well aware there are significant bushfire areas, and those of you who ran through, for example, the Toowoomba Valley and up Big Jack saw the devastation from the bushfires. While most trees have been sorted, there still just remains a challenge around dropping tree branches. Similarly, you're not able to meet up with your runner until Toowoomba. So once you see them leave at the start, you're not allowed to see them again until Toowoomba, which is 24K, and usually that's sort of 2.5 hours anyway. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the leapfrog process, look after your runner, let them run off, and then go and jump ahead to a 5 or 10K spot. We don't need you hovering behind a runner the whole way. And as a runner who's done the event a few times, it's actually quite disconcerting to have a vehicle sitting on your backside for that period of time. No handoffs from a moving vehicle. We don't want you in the middle of the road passing drinks out to your runner. Pull over, stop, pass the drink off to them, or the food or whatever it is. So no assistance from a moving vehicle. Again, you can carry your runner's mandatory gear. A pacer can mule for them as much as you want. All right. And if there is an issue, either health-wise, and we do have medics on course, if you require medical assistance, please let us know, and also what time it is and what the detail is, and communicate that to us. And if appropriate, we'll get a medic to you. Your race rules and information also contain all details of the medical centres at Bega, at Eden, Bega, Cooma, and Jinbine as well. Their opening hours, the local hospitals, and Cooma Hospital is the core hospital, I suppose, for the event. They're aware that we're coming through, and that last year that was actually beneficial because post-race, one of the runners needed to drop into Cooma Hospital, and as soon as he mentioned what he'd done, it helped enormously because they were ready and prepared to actually work through what his challenges were. If you retire from the race, again, you need to communicate so that we know who's on course at what time, so we can manage that appropriately with the local authorities, but also we're well aware of that for runner safety as well.
So, race officials. So there's certain parts of the actual race where we're going to have race officials just to usher you and make sure that you get across like main highways. The first one is like a half a kilometre into the race. So you jump over the bridge, and then basically you move from the right-hand side of the road over to the left-hand side of the road. That's on the Princess Highway, or the Prince's Highway. Then there's just before 4K, we've got race officials there at Brandy Creek Trail, where that joins Toowoomba Road. And then basically at 24 and a bit K, we've got the junction of Toowoomba Road and Perico Road, and we'll get race officials there. And the last bit in the Bega Valley is where Toowoomba Road and Perico Street joins Big Jack Mountain Road, just to make sure that people don't peel off in the wrong direction. But it's kind of straight ahead, and we'll get race officials to make sure that you don't deviate. In the Snowy Monaro region, we've got Big Jack Road, where you kind of take the left-hand turn into Mount Dara Road. That's around about 66K. And then on the Monaro Highway at Bibbinlook, we need to cross there. So it's just north of the Bombala Bridge. Yeah. Bombala River Bridge. So we've got officials there just to make sure that you get across. And then deep into the actual event in Jindabyne, just as you come down Barry Way, you have to cross over the road there to actually get on the lake side of the actual road, and we'll get officials there as well. So basically those race officials will make sure that the first and the last people are actually, the first and the last runners get across those junctions or those intersections safely.
Yeah, sure. Just 2 points, particularly on the crossing at Bibbinlook. It's important when you come out onto the road, you remain on the right-hand side, cross the bridge, travel up to the marshal, then cross over. Some people just run onto the road and cross straight over, and you can have people on both sides of the roadway on the bridge, and then that obviously becomes a challenge for the local traffic. And on that road, the traffic coming through is doing 100K, 110K. They're not going slow. It's a short strip of road, but again, when you get up onto that section, you'll be able to see with the marshal. As you come down off the dirt road, you actually see where the marshal is. Stay on the right-hand side of the road, go to the marshal, and then receive the marshal's instruction to cross. If it's not, the marshal will direct you to cross. If he or she says don't cross, you don't cross. If that costs you 5 or 10 seconds, that's just how it is. Run faster elsewhere to make up for it, but the marshal has the say. One pleasing thing last year was the Jindabyne police. In speaking with Jindabyne police, they're actually really complimentary about the road safety of the event, and they're also really complimentary about the marshals. Thank the marshals, they're there to help you.
Cool. And as Greg mentioned earlier on about the actual WhatsApp, we're using that as like the main communication channel. We went a wee bit over the top last year, so we're trying to restrict that to crew chiefs only this year. So for any emergency communications, you know, get the crew chiefs to actually communicate via WhatsApp. If it's a real emergency, then there's a few of us that have actually got sat phones as well, and we'll hand out those numbers prior to the actual start. As happened last year, and has happened on a couple of occasions before, the weather determines that we have to shut the race down at Charlotte Pass, negating the opportunity to make a summit at Mount Kosciuszko. So we're in touch with like National Parks and Wildlife Services, pretty good mates with a guy called Tim Greville, who's the ranger down there. And in conjunction with him, then we'll make a decision as to whether the actual weather presents too much of a hazard for people to actually make the summit. So on occasions, and it happened last year towards the latter end of the actual race, then we have to terminate the race at Charlotte Pass. And you'll still be awarded an inclement finish in that actual eventuality occurs. Getting a wee bit serious, lack of compliance with race rules by either the runner or the crew members. That's going to result in the actual runner serving a time penalty at Charlotte Pass at the minimum. It could result in disqualification from the race. It could result in exclusion from subsequent races. We want to make sure that we protect the integrity of the race and the actual reputation of the race. So we ask everybody to really make sure that you're in compliance with the race rules. As I said, we'll give like time penalties where we see fit. We might give you multiple time penalties. We might disqualify you. You can't appeal that, and there's no appeal process. Race director's discretion is absolutely final. Last slide, guys, and then we can kind of get into like Q&A.
So some of the things that are just to remind you about, some of the things that are a little bit different from past years for people. Again, COVID vaccinations are mandatory for all. We are getting the website established so that you'll be able to upload those onto it, and we will ask you to have a COVID test approximately 3 days prior to the event. Again, it's about protection for local communities, and we thank everybody for their understanding in that. Runners have to wear a rear flashing light at all times. And again, just think of a basic bike light that clips onto the back of your shorts. It's pretty straightforward, and it's actually doesn't bother you when you're running. We've been asked and have put it into the race rules, and this is as a direction for the National Parks and Wildlife Service: no standing or climbing atop the can at the summit. All right. The reason for that is they've had to get helicopters in a couple of times to get people down from the summit who've fallen and broken legs, and we appreciate that no one wants to do that, and that's a directive from National Parks. So while we're perhaps party poopers with that, that's a condition of the approval from National Parks. So please don't do that. In addition, just when you park at Charlotte Pass, you're all pretty much aware that if it's a nice fine day, there'll be cars there galore, and perhaps a lot of walkers out on the summit track. Parking will be at a premium. Please don't park in short-term parking zones, and particularly the 20-minute park zones at Charlotte Pass. Wear your race bib at all times. Support crews park safely at all times. Be on the right-hand side of the road. All crew chiefs will provide the details, but please use the WhatsApp group for any requests. Again, there'll be one just for crew chiefs, and there'll be a separate everyone group, and you can go for your life on that one. Avoid running in large groups. A little bit of safety, but it's also linking back to COVID. And a reminder for those people who've done the event before, but not for a while, the cutoff at Dalgety is the bridge. That means you have to get over the bridge to meet the cutoff. You can't get to Dalgety Hall and put the feet up and decide you're going to have a 3 or 4 hour rest there. You've got to get to the bridge and be out of Dalgety. That's the cutoff point. Remind only one aid station, which is very rudimentary, and that's just where you come off the trail. Most runners prefer all their own foods and details anyway. Dalgety Hall will be stocked with soups, bread rolls, etc., as per last year. And again, please thank the locals at Dalgety who are putting that on for us, and we appreciate their support. No toilet at Boydtown Beach. Please take care of whatever you need to take care of before you leave your accommodation. There will be no toilets out there. And for the support and sake of the locals, stay away from bushes. We don't want any of that. And a couple other last things to finish. We do have another couple of webinars to go yet. So we have a webinar specifically for support crew as well. And indeed the webinar, which is the safety briefing on the Wednesday night. We just found last year, it took the pressure off on Thursday night. Runners could concentrate on whatever they like to do to make themselves comfortable the night before a race. So we'll do the safety briefing via webinar on the Wednesday night. The last thing, which is still a wild card for us, is whatever COVID-19 may bring our way. As much as we prepare, there is still nothing to say that there are not any last minute issues created by LGA lockdowns, borders reopening and reclosing or other things. We'll just deal with that progressively as we go. We'll communicate as much as we can on that, and simply just reach out and ask us if you have any questions. Some of you have done that already, which is fantastic, but please keep that open. And we're all struggling with some of the COVID challenges still. Nikki's been able to get out and have a haircut. I haven't yet, so that's one of the other challenges we've got as we work through the COVID piece as well. Nikki, any other closing points before we move to Q&A?
I think we've covered it all off. Do we have any questions? You obviously need to come off mute before you give your question.
Greg and Mickey, I've got a quick one. Given that the support crew need to have mandatory gear from Charlotte's Pass to the summit, does that include a rear flashing light?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
If only all the questions like that, Scott.
I understand the COVID vaccination mandatory for all. Is the COVID test mandatory for both runners and support crew?
Yeah.
Yes, it is, Peter.
Yeah.
Yep.
And as you're aware, Peter, even though you're vaccinated, you can still carry COVID.
Yep.
Take it down to others. And
Yep,
that's the reason why.
Yep, no problem.
Anything else? Any other questions, points, anything you'd like to share?
Just a quick one on language, if you don't mind. Just wanted to clarify something. CP, is CP going to be considered as checkpoint or Charlotte's Pass on any communications?
Charlotte Pass.
Thank you.
And that's a little bit of a habit, I suppose, we've gotten into as well on how we refer to things. But no, that's a fair point. We will look to be very consistent with that.
Thank you. Maybe just more an FYI than anything else on this one too. Rocky Hall, as far as reception goes, not necessarily the best place to be getting phone reception or necessarily passing on a message from a WhatsApp perspective. Just a tip for anyone who might be on the Telstra service though, if you actually make your way to the other side of the rural fire station, you can at least pick up some sort of reception there. But for some, it'll be a case of probably having to make their way up Big Jack before they're able to get suitable reception.
Yeah, great point, Andrew. Thank you.
Yeah, and we understand that. But what we do expect is that you nominate at the time you went through that checkpoint, and as soon as practical, please dial that in and let us know about that. Coverage continues to improve. It continues to be patchy in some places. Make the most of it when you have it.
Yeah, thanks for that, Andrew. Good point.
Anything else? Otherwise, we'll say going once. Going twice. I think 3 times and we're done.
Guys, the main thing is like the region's opening up, and it's still November the 1st. We're getting the actual indications that things are going to open up. Got a couple of inside tracks into that information, and it's still looking good. So fingers crossed that actually does transpire and everything starts to open up from November 1. But as Greg says, it's the main wild card we're dealing with. It's definitely delivered a few curveballs, and we continue to actually just respond the best way we can. So going once, going twice, done. Thanks everybody for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Have a great night, and we look forward to seeing you all in Eden.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks,
Thanks
guys.
so much, guys.
No worries.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.